Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back. I was going back and looking at some of the videos recently of some of the podcasts we shot, and it seems like I always say thank you at the beginning. I'll say it again. Thank you so much for your listens. We had the largest non-release day yesterday that we've had in the history of the Dental Wealth Podcast, which is a day we didn't release a podcast. We had a huge number of listeners. So thank you, listeners. Matthew, thank you for being with me again, buddy.
The Monday mornings, man, they want to get after it.
Monday, that's a different type of person, right? Gets at Monday morning, start the week off right.
Yep.
I didn't think about that. That's the overachiever, right?
Yep. So
now those of you who listen Monday morning are like, yeah, that's me, right?
That's me. I'm downloading all the podcasts on Monday.
Good. I mean, you got to set your week off right. Listen to something that'll get you in the right frame of mind. I always try to do that myself. Gosh, a lot to talk about. I got to tell, before I even jump into some content, I want to share a story with you guys. And the person who walked up to me might even be listening right now. I was at the gym working out, and this gentleman came up, and he kind of grabbed me and said, hey, listen, I read Financial Evolution. He's not a dentist, and, talked about the impact of the book and how much it impacted him, and what an amazing thing it had done for his life. And it meant a lot to me. And I did say to, like, right afterwards to my trainer, I was like, the amount of hours that goes into that greeting is actually pretty, right? We don't realize how much work goes into something like that. But I also say thank you for all of you that have purchased the book, that have went out and gotten it, that have sent me things, that have said thank you. But I'm going to ask a favor. It's like the favor time. I've had like 130 people walk up at least and be like, well, I love the book. I've bought like 5 copies. Do me a favor and go on Amazon and write a review for me. That would be really awesome. I'd appreciate that. That's just one of those things that we all mean to do, we all want to do. It takes about 20 seconds, but it would mean a lot to me. So if you guys don't mind doing that, it would be awesome. Just my own little personal plug as we start this podcast. And if you haven't gotten the book, look, I'll send you an autographed edition. Just, reach out to me. But I'd love to get that in your hands because, when we do financial coaching days, I take so much that comes out of this book because this book it came out of doing thousands of coaching days. Yeah. And the whole premise of Financial Evolution was, hey, I've sat down with thousands of doctors and look, they all break into 5 categories. Mm-hmm. And where are you in those categories? And then what do you do to get to the next level? And, in statistics, we have sample size. So it's like, I have a huge sample size. Like, you want to know what people are doing to get to the next level. We've talked about this podcast. People, will have upper limit problems and they'll get stuck. And so it's important for you to know that, like there's a next level. And what is that next level? What does it look like?
And it's in different areas, too. I mean, the biggest comment we get is, this book can relate to, anyone. And we're like, yeah, I mean, that was the point. It's funny how it's not, just segregated towards dentists. I mean, that's everyone right. Can use. I mean, we did a huge, what was it, 3 years ago? We did a giant Financial Evolution event where we had, speakers there. We had a lot of people in the attendance, and all the speakers came up to us was like, wow, this is, we can use all this information too. Exactly.
Well, and yeah, it's right. It's not like look, whether you're a dentist or not, if your buddy, I think one of the doctors just sent me, he said, hey, I love the book. I sent it over to a friend of mine that's got a mortgage company. So anyhow, that's a plug because I really do appreciate it. And I do appreciate the support. Matthew came up to me today before we started the podcast and had 14 different dental questions and things he wanted to bring up. And I said to him, I'd like to do that, but I'd like to take a few minutes to just talk about a subject really quick. And we'll relate it to a dental office in a moment. Matthew has no idea. He's looking at me like, what is he going to say? He has no idea what I'm going to say right now. But
I'm on pins and needles over here. I do want to say we're on episode 97, guys. So we're 3 away from the big live stream that we're going to do on Facebook and YouTube. So we're going to do things a little unorthodox leading up to this. So you're going to be listening to this on a Tuesday morning. Be on the lookout. Tomorrow, there's going to be another podcast released, okay? So I know we typically do the Tuesday, Thursday motto. We're going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as we ramp up to episode 100.
And on that episode, I'm thinking about multiple gifts that I'm doing. I'm going to do something really cool. One of them's worth a lot of money. And so I'm thinking about some really cool gifts. You've got to have liked and subscribed. Is that what you said?
You like and subscribe, and then during the actual live stream, we're going to open up some like a little Q&A action. So we want you to interact. So you get entered in by interacting on it. So if there's questions you want us to cover, if there's a certain topic, or tell us what your favorite episode or what was the favorite thing you learned during one of the podcast episodes. We want to see that feedback. Every time you do one of that, you'll be entered in for a chance. We're going to have our team monitoring it. I think everyone's come up to us at this point. It's like, what are you guys giving away? Like, what are you guys doing? We're so excited for it. So I know we keep going back and forth with what we're going to do.
Well, because I always change my mind at the last second. That's the problem. It's like the last second I'll change my mind, do something. I'll add an extra thing in there. That's
always.
funny.
So we're excited for the ramp up. Again, just post in it, comment on it. We're going to be monitoring it. You want us to talk about something. Well, it's going to be live in person, so it's on you guys.
So Matthew, if someone's listening right now, they want to reach out, submit a question, how do they do that?
So all you have to do simply is you can info@towerleadership.com. You can simply send a question in if you want us to do that ahead of time. Or when we do go live, you'll get a notification that says, we're live now. What I would like you to do is in the comment, all you have to do is either like it, and we'll see that you like the actual post itself or the video, and we'll be able to put your name in the hat. Or if you comment on it and you have questions, all you have to do is leave a simple comment, and you just say, hey, this is awesome, I want to talk about this, and then we'll address it. And I'll be monitoring it right in front of you guys, so we'll be able to kind of bring in the questions as you guys bring them.
Love it. Awesome. Well, glad to see everybody there. Hey, look, be on that. It's going to be cool. Thank you, everyone, for your support. I mean, we started this podcast. It was just an idea, and here we are at 100, and the amount of people that have come to us and said this podcast has done amazing things for their practice and for their lives. It means a lot. So here's the topic I want to talk about today. There's like our plug. Like we just did like 10 minutes of plug. So I was reading this thing, and those of you someone asked me recently, I think they said it was a question. They were like, what does Eric read? And I think I'd addressed that on this podcast. Well, I'm all kinds of things, and my book list is pretty large, but I came across something the last few days. I thought, man, this is powerful stuff. And it had to do with mindset, right? You guys know I like to talk about mindset sometimes, because that's literally where the biggest difference between the people who become ultra successful and who don't, that's where it's at. So I was thinking about this, and it was a great concept, which is every thought. Now, we talk about it as far as capital. Like we talk about money, right? And so I talk about to tell people, look, there's capital investments and there's capital expenses. Capital investment, capital expense. Don't confuse the two, right? There's a capital investment. That means you're taking capital. Money stuff you take home. It's capital inside the business. You're taking capital. You're utilizing that capital to purchase a piece of equipment. Typically, it can also be a team member. It could be other things. That has a return. So it has a return on it. You get that back. Then there's capital expenses. Capital expenses are things like replacing the computers, okay? Mm-hmm. Replacing the computers are not going to give you a return. I don't care how much Apple or Microsoft tells you they will. They're not, okay? Yeah. They might look cool, but they're not really going to do anything, okay? So those are expenses. Mm-hmm. Well, this concept I came across that I thought was just beautiful was this idea of our thoughts. And if you're at a place where you can write this down, I'd love for you to write this down. All your thoughts are either investments or expenses. And I thought, they just blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Because I thought, like, that's true, right? So, we've talked about scarcity mindset on this podcast to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. This idea of, like, what am I thinking about all day long? When I walk in my practice, and how does this relate to even my practice? Like, are my thoughts around growth? Are my thoughts around investment in team? Are my thoughts about ROI? Are my thoughts about building something amazing? Are my thoughts around vision? Are my thoughts about my physical health? Are my thoughts around intentionality? Because those things yield results, right? It's like, and I was thinking the other day about this idea that I was reading a thing about, small movements like an aircraft carrier, right? I was on an aircraft carrier for 4 years, and it was at one point we were dry dock. Yeah. And we were in dry dock, like you can see the whole bottom of this giant beast, and when you did, you could see the rudders, and the rudders aren't that big, and yet they move this giant vessel, right? This gigantic, city, are moved by these little panels. It looks like. okay, but here's like the other caveat to that. I thought, like, because I thought about this, like small movements can make a big difference. Like, you take a horse, pulling the bit, and the horse will pull a direction, just like a little tug. So little directions, little pulls like that can make a big direction. And then I added this caveat in my mind, was like over a period of time.
Yeah.
Like an aircraft carrier doesn't turn on a dime, right? And so what happens is like we become what our thoughts are, and we're constantly thinking, like, obviously in our brains all day long. We're like in there all day long listening to this podcast. Now, here's what's happened in this podcast. I already tell you, you've dipped in and out of this podcast, like mentally, right? Matthew's sitting across from me. He's probably dipped in and out. Like, he hears me speak all day. He's probably like in and out. He's like, what is he talking about now? So here's the thing. It's like our mind does this, like it's in and out of thought, right? And so those thoughts ultimately become who we are. Neuroplasticity creates, right? Eventually become fixed neuropathways, and then eventually that's who you become, right? And then you attract who you become, right? I know this is a little deep for some of you, but just hear me out on this. So what happens is as a business owner, as a dental practice business owner, what ends up happening is your thoughts become your reality. And let me give you an example in a dental practice. My team is horrible. Matthew, have you ever heard that from a doctor?
Once a day, like probably even more than that. It's like the number one issue is, and I love it, they put staff. And you know how we feel, and you've heard it here on the Dental Web podcast. We don't believe in the word staff.
So you got this person who says, I can't find any good people. See, that I would say that is an expense, right? And what I mean by that is that basically what it did. It had no ROI. There was no good that was going to come out of that thought. There was no productivity that came out. And I'm just using an example people can relate to it. By the way, we've all had that day where we're like, damn it, And so when you started having those team issues, all of a sudden you start going, that's an expense. Because you have those expense thoughts, and you're like, look, this person's no good. These people are no great. I can't find any. I can't find any good people. Versus the investment thought. Versus how do I attract a talented team? How do I get my current team to do better? Yeah. How is it that I can become a better leader? What could I be doing before I arrive to the office to make my team more motivated? And so when we start thinking about these and start saying, now, like, I want you to juxtapose those positions. One of them is an expense. It doesn't get anything. It just like that Zurich machine that you bought because you called it a capital investment and took out, you thought, strategic debt, but then it ended up becoming a clothes hanger, and it and it became a capital expense versus an investment. It can be an investment, but oftentimes an expense. And then the same thing happens, like, or you're buying that new fancy, like I had a doctor who talked about buying a scanner. I said, hey, what's the ROI? She said at that time, there's no ROI on it. I said, then we don't buy it. So it's the same thing. We buy things sometimes that are fancy because it makes us feel good, but we realize there's no ROI on it, and so therefore it's an expense. And so we go back to that same mindset within the practice and say, holy crap, Eric, you're right. That had no return. There was no return on that thought process. Zero, zilch, nada. However, it still created a fixed position. And then what ends up happening with that fixed position is that you go out and tell all your friends, like, do you have a hard time finding people too? By the way, that question was already setting up to get the answer you wanted. And then once they say, well, of course I do, then you go, I knew it. There aren't any good people. And versus if you talk to that same person and you said, we're going to call your friend Gina, Dr. Gina. I said, Dr. Gina, what do you think? You've known me for a while. What could I be doing to be a better leader? How do you motivate people? You seem like you inspire your team quite well. How do you motivate them? So what happens is those are investments because they yield a return. They yield information. They yield something you can utilize. They yield something in your practice that you can use to grow. And I think that's powerful. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest questions that I get, and I was asking the team members, I was like, what do you see in the marketplace? I think one of the things that came up, and I've noticed that too, is there's like apparently I've had a lot of doctors say there's a shortage in hygienists, and I'm thinking I don't really know why. I mean, that's just another team issue. They're looking at it from an expense, and they're like, I can't go find them. I don't know what I can do. Instead of looking at it as a
Stay there. Great. I love that you said that. Like, this is a boom case study, like ultimate example. So the expense says hygienists are hard to find. That doesn't yield results, by the way. That there's limited in the marketplace, doesn't yield results. I got to pay them a fortune, doesn't yield results. Like, these are the things, those comments yield 0 results. They have no results but to make. That's not true. They have one result: frustration, maybe anger, right? There's no positive results that's coming from. There's no return. There's no return except for creating a story which isn't even true, and then it becomes anger. Now you say, well, it is true. It's true that there's a lack of hygienists. Well, the truth is that we have to go and say, I am the number one person in the marketplace at attracting hygienists.
yeah.
I'm going to create a plan to go attract hygienists like nobody else in the marketplace. In fact, I'm going to go create a plan that literally makes the top hygienists in the marketplace. First of all, let me identify who they are. How can I attract them? What can I build? What can I see? All those have results. And while everyone else is wording, I'm actually going to go out and talk to the hygiene schools or whatever I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to create a program around that, and those things yield results. So it's like what ends up happening is when we say you are what you think, right? You are what you become that. So let's take these 2 dentists, okay? Let's example. Dentist 1. My hygiene's down because I can't find a hygienist. You got to pay them too much. ... No return, anger, frustration, bitterness, low revenues, low profitability, unhappiness. Option 2. Creates the plan, creates a system, figures out how to get, put this together because he or she has focused all their energy on the investment piece. Then revenues go up, retention goes up, attraction goes up, profitability goes up. They feel more confident. Then that yields into other parts of their business. It actually yields into their family life as well. So what ended up happening is, where did it all start? Hell, it all started with a mindset, right? It started with this idea of saying, are the thoughts I'm thinking on a consistent basis expenses or investments? And how we do it all the time, right? This is where negative talk comes in. Negative talk has no place in achievement because even when you lose, you win, right? Even when there's failure, you win if you have the right mindset. Say, look, I didn't do whatever it was. This is the great thing I learned from that. I learned such an amazing tool that I'm going to use in the future. And so that's an investment. So just like money, which I study capital markets and capital movements, isn't the brain such the same way? Isn't that kind of interesting?
Yep. I mean, we did a whole workshop on it, I think, couple years back about your leadership capital and what that means to an organization. And that's completely just how you carry yourself, how you bring yourself in the bit, what your attitude look like. Everything you do is, a lot of times what you even talk about and you stress to our clients is the biggest thing holding them back is their themselves.
It's always mindset.
It's always mindset. And it's just, and I think the biggest takeaway from like what your beginning analogy was with the rudder, making the incremental movements, is every time a capital investment or an investment is made in your mindset, that's a little adjustment. Instead of just trying to fix it all at once and do a knee-jerk reaction, it's not going to work out really well. It's just the little things that will get you on course.
Well, and you have to have that because here's why you have to have it. Because shit takes time. That's why you gotta have it. See I see the feeds you guys get. They think I'm a doctor online, so I get the same like sales and marketing stuff you guys get. So it's like 100 patients in the first 12 seconds, or whatever, and growth, gigantic growth. I get it. Look, I see it all. But here's what you need to understand: like, to build it right takes time. It does take time. And so what ends up happening by having the right mindset, you end up going, I'm on path. And I'm going to continue to use this. I'm going to continue to move. And then what ends up happening, you'll start to change and reframe the way you look at things. So when you do have that bad day, and you will, you don't go back to the antiquated way of expense thinking and go, and immediately move over to go, I knew it. I knew it wasn't going to work. I knew it wasn't. And that can happen, right? It's the same thing. Diet and exercise relate to it very well. It's like the day all of a sudden, look, someone asked me one time, I talk about this idea that, I was talking to my trainer this morning, this weekend. It was kind of interesting. Someone said there was a gigantic beast of a guy. I mean, he's like, I guess he's training for some world bodybuilding competition. And he's like, I don't know, 8'10" or something. I mean, he's a gigantic guy, and and he just muscles on top of muscles or whatever. But he says to my trainer, he says, when I left, I guess I found this out on Sunday. I went there on Saturday and Sunday. And by the way, isn't that interesting? I'd be there on Saturday and Sunday. But he goes, that guy's got great genetics. And my trainer looked back at me and goes, no, he doesn't have great genetics. He works his ass off. And the thing is it's taken 4 or 5 years. I mean, I don't try to do a 60-day thing because my trainer was like saying to me one day, he was like, look, you can eat just broccoli and sweet potato and chicken for like 6 months, right ever, and be like, I'm like, man, pass. I'm like, pass. I want to be able to build a long-term sustainable health, and I have.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm years of not going backwards. I still remember this tailor who said to me, he was like, you better keep your fat pants. I feel like I want to like call him up. Like, right? So it actually inspired me. I'm glad he said it. Well, it's the same thing with your dental office, okay? So when you have that moment, well, it's like, how do you build something sustainable? How do you create a business that's sustainable? How do you not do the flash in the pan stuff? I mean, the clients that I work with that are going from 1 location to 4 locations and associate after associate after associate, and they're building and they're expanding and they're creating wealth and they're paying off their mortgages and they're doing all this stuff. It took work. And I tell you that on this podcast because I'll actually take away the way work connotation, we give a negative connotation. It took investment. It took investment thinking. It took, this is going to yield. It's going to yield. I see the result. I'm going to yield. I'm going to keep on path. I'm going to keep doing what Eric says to do. I'm going to do the next thing. I'm going to do the next thing. I'm going to slip back a little bit. That's okay. Sometimes I want to eat a Snickers bar. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Oh, looks like Thanksgiving's here. I'm going to eat a little bad for a day, but I'm not going to eat bad for a month. Hear me on that. It's about Thanksgiving time. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going because there's no there to get to. There's no there to get to. It's constant continual growth. That's what investment thinking is. Because here's the thing is expense thinking is once I get there, I get to stop. Hell, that's expense thinking.
Eventually.
Look, Warren Buffett's 90 years old, man. He's still going strong every day. Now, can he go on an exotic vacation? Sure. Can he come and go as he wants? So I say this to say on this podcast, what is your brain? Because I am on this mission, Matthew. Like it is just like taking over like my thought process, which is like what makes the difference between the client that walks in, 2 clients, one has all the capital, they both have, by the way, the same capital resources. Or 2 doctors, I shouldn't say our clients, but 2 doctors who walk up to me and one becomes ultra successful. The other one probably didn't engage because he had expense thinking anyhow. But ultimately speaking, like 2 people who one just takes off and just conquers the world and the other can't get out of their darn way. And I'm like, they're the same race, they're the same background, they had the same families, they had the same capital resources, they went to the same damn dental school. But one has become financially just beautifully wealthy, amazing family does, and the other one can't get out of his way or her way. And it's this. And it's like I'm trying to, what is the result, man? It's what you think about all day long. It's your focus all day long. Is it expense thinking? Are you focused? And I'm not talking about, by the way, I'm not talking about scarcity and the fact of thinking about expenses. That's not what I'm talking about. So if you came in the podcast late, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are your thoughts yielding returns? Are they yielding returns? I think that's like the key to this thing, which is, if you create wealth, and I'm not just talking about quantitatively, I'm talking about qualitatively too. Are your thoughts yielding the return, or are you allowing your thoughts to control you? And then that's creating a reality. Then you're reinforcing that reality, and then you've actually lived the life of the reality you don't want to live. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether because the average person, the average doctor who walked up to me was doing $1.8 million. Maybe as an associate comes in there, a day or 2 a week. doing well revenue-wise. Like when I look at their business model, like that's not, like their potential isn't even close. Like they've even scraped the barrel of potential. And so even that person who feels like in the dental profession they're successful, I would argue there's so much more to go. There's so much more we can go after. And I would encourage people to do that. So I would like you, like this would be a great assignment if you'd want to do this during the day. Like grab a little journal and walk it around. Like I know you might feel silly for a day. Maybe you do it on a day you're not working clinically. And just capture your thoughts. Watch how many of them are expense. And in fact,
just do like a T-chart.
Yeah,
like
do a T-chart.
Expense on one side, investment on the other.
That's right.
And then just do a tally.
Think about your thoughts all day long, what you're thinking about. Are you thinking about investment and growth? Are you thinking about abundance? Are you thinking about opportunity? Are you thinking about the things that, having a greater marriage or greater life? Or are you just thinking about scarcity? Are you thinking about expense? Are you thinking about what's not going right? Are you thinking about why you can't get ahead? Are you thinking about why this other person's fault that all your problems have happened? And none of those things. And by the way, it might be someone's fault. Let's just go to that scenario and say, look, maybe it is someone's fault that something happened. Maybe it is. I don't totally agree with that. By the way, it's always our fault, but that's okay. But let's assume that there's probably good enough reason to believe that it is somebody else's fault. Still, expense thinking, you can't play that game. I've had doctors that have met me for the first time and they're complaining about something that was 10 years ago. So it's like, so what I would encourage you to do is out of this podcast is think about like this. How do you think about your day? How do you wake up to your day? How do you think on a daily basis? And is it an expense thinking or is it an investment thinking? Are you putting your time and attention on things that get you results? Are you putting your time and attention on things that yield a return? If you do that over a period of time, it will change the way that you see the world. It'll change the way you think. And just like working out, at first it'll be hard to do. But over time, it'll be easier and easier. And the only change will be how much weight you can lift, how much return you get on those thoughts, and how big those thoughts are. Guys, thanks for being here this week, today. Remember, we've got a busy week for you. Stay engaged in the Dental Well podcast this week. We've got a whole bunch of episodes, and then we're going to end this week with 100. So thanks for being here. Matthew, appreciate you.
Always. Great to be here.
See you guys next time.